This village blacksmith was behind America's dramatic Pioneer Days expansion. From his smithy came horseshoes and wheel rims of iron, and later of steel. The prairie schooners that opened the continent rode on the blacksmith's products. The pioneers who voyaged out across the plains depended only on themselves. They relied on their own faith, courage, and resourcefulness. But steel axe heads to hack out clearings in the forest for their homes, was their great ally. The pioneer's axe conquered the forest and made of it a place to work and live. Steel saws cut the forest into logs, and steel tools shaped the logs into boards to make dwellings for the pioneers. Steel plows turned the earth into farmland to feed the country's growing appetite. But ours was a horse and wagon civilization until a new pioneer, the iron horse, came snorting and puffing across the prairie to increase the rate of America's progress 100-fold. The railroads flung across the land a network of steel rails that bounded into one nation, more prosperous than anyone had dreamed any nation might be. Today, steel and the industry that produces it continue to serve the pioneer spirit. Thousands of steel products pour from America's mills. Modern pioneers opening new frontiers. Frontiers which offer greater happiness, security, and prosperity for our nation. America's steel industry is big business. Its more than 250 companies make about 40% of the world's steel. Yet, it is small business, too, for it's owned by over 750,000 people. 1 out of about every 200 Americans owns steel stock. Nearly 700,000 men and women work in the iron and steel industry, and they're among the world's best paid workers, earning around $4 billion a year, or an average of more than $20 a day. The making of steel is a complicated, highly skilled process, using the talents and crafts of hundreds of thousands of people. In this open hearth furnace, the raw materials, steel scrap and pig iron, which was made from iron ore, are blended into steel. Along with these ingredients goes a carefully measured quantity of limestone to change the metal's impurities into slag, which will later be drained off. The molten steel is cast into ingots. These weigh about 6 tons, but size varies in different plants depending on what is to be made from them. Removed from their molds, the ingots are placed in a soaking pit. This is an oven which equalizes the ingot's heat, bringing the entire chunk of metal to an even and very high temperature. The buggy carries the white-hot ingots to the rolling mill to be formed into useful shapes and sizes. American mills can produce more than 135 million tons of steel ingots a year. The ingot arrives at the rolling mill in its white-hot, malleable form. It will be squeezed and kneaded back and forth through a series of rolls, and then into a wide variety of plates, beams, pipes, rails, bars, and other marketable shapes. The men who guide the ingot through the rolling mill are typical of the industry's most highly trained technicians. Operation of the mill might appear entirely automatic, but no mechanical device can take the place of skill, experience, and judgment. For steel making is more than a business, it is an art. Gradually, the steel is shaped into new forms. This is a section of a rail, and like every steel product, it must be flawless in form and quality, and must meet rigid specifications. For that's the rule in a free, competitive society. Good workmanship builds a good business, and competition guarantees the highest standards of production. Americans today are pioneers, though we travel in express trains instead of covered wagons. No uncharted territory remains, but there are other frontiers, and we conquer them in the pioneer way, through our own initiative and resourcefulness. And steel, even more than it was for the pioneers, is our ally. Steel-framed buildings sheathed with stainless steel open new frontiers in the sky. Steel bridges span our rivers and bays, and steel machinery helps bring our mineral wealth into use. The ships that sail our waterways, helping to make the United States a world leader in commerce and industry, are ships of steel. It's used for farm equipment to help make us the best-fed nation in the world, and our farmers the most prosperous. Steel vehicles carry us through the streets of our busy cities, cities whose very backbone and framework are of steel. When an American goes on vacation, he's likely to set out across the country in his own car. The car he drives is of steel. The concrete highway is reinforced with it. From steel come the weapons to keep our country free. In the traditional American way, our nation's steel companies help America handle not only the defense needs of the moment, but those of the future. This voluntary production means that our fighting men, wherever they may be, have the best equipment that mill, engineer, and technician can make. Steel keeps America safe now, and a freely growing and developing steel industry guards our future as surely as these big guns, guns of steel, guard the freedom and security of America and the entire free world. As our steel needs increase, new mills and furnaces are constructed. These mills provide a vast livelihood for countless thousands of other workers and businessmen. A man who makes conveyor belts for ore mines, a bookkeeper in a Great Lakes shipping company, or a driver who handles huge earth-moving equipment like a toy. Large-scale expansion and improvements since 1946, privately financed, have raised our steel-making capacity to about 2.5 times Russia's full total. It exceeds the annual output of Great Britain by about 6 to 1, and it exceeds the output of France by about 9 to 1. In steel's laboratories, scientists strive continually to develop new and better products. Millions of dollars of private capital are spent in the search for new uses for steel, better and safer ways of making steel, new ways to expand its production, and to develop raw material reserves the world over to feed our ever-growing demands for steel products. The gigantic electric steel-making furnace is an example of the endless research. In this furnace are manufactured the highest grades of steel for automobiles, aircraft, ball bearings, surgical instruments. The ingredients to be melted are dropped into the top of the furnace. Now the heat has to be increased, in some cases up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. For this enormous heat, the furnace uses enough electric current to light a city. Between 3 electrodes and the metal below, tremendous man-made short circuits leap back and forth. The skill and judgment of the melter are all important in a job like this. A special instrument is used to judge the molten metal's temperature. It's pronounced okay. While developing and expanding methods of making steel, the industry scientists also have made steel making safer. Thanks to their research, hazards are minimized in handling even liquid hot metals like these. And steel is now one of the safest industries for the men and women who work in it. In this wire manufacturing plant, steel is rolled into a rod and drawn out into wire. From it will come an infinite variety of steel products, ranging from cables holding up a great bridge to a tiny pin. Whatever the final product, the wire is checked to make sure it fits requirements precisely. A tin plate mill takes steel and turns it into tin plate for what are popularly known as tin cans. The so-called tin can, a product that has revolutionized American living, actually is only about 1% tin. The rest is steel. So it's more correct to call it the steel can. Most of the tin plate produced in the United States is shipped to the container industry, approximately 1/2 of it going into food cans. The United States produces about 3/4 of the world's tin plate. We are also the world's largest tin plate consumer, using more of it than the rest of the world combined. Steel, racing along here at 30 miles an hour, is made into more than 20 billion cans for food alone each year. Many more cans are needed for oil, tooth powder, paint, and other products all over the world. The gleaming tin plate is cut into convenient sheets, and before these are sent out to be made into cans, careful inspection. A few moments ago, we saw battleships, bridges, and skyscrapers. In smaller ways, too, steel carries on its pioneering job, ways that bring it into the home and the life of every one of us. Cookie cutters, pie plates, humble but essential articles. Stainless steel, doing the jobs that only steel can do, goes to work in the modern processing of food, helping to raise our nation's health standards. Steel comes into every home, pioneering new ways to make life easier and better. Each steel company vies with more than 250 others for the patronage of the best customers in the world, the producers of America's essentials and conveniences. A steel hairpin, for example, making for a woman's happiness. Every one of us, every day, uses steel in hundreds of ways, and we start using it almost from the instant we are born. America's free, competitive economy depends and thrives on a free, competitive steel industry. From a razor blade to a skyscraper, steel builds our nation. Steel, from a hypodermic needle to a pipeline that stretches out across the country. Steel, from a whirling egg beater to an enormous suspension bridge. Steel, from a needle in the hands of a woman to the hull of the world's fastest ocean liner. Steel, from the ticking mechanism of a watch to the framework of the world's tallest building. Steel, pioneer of progress in America's past, enriches our nation now and opens new frontiers for America's bright future.